Hey guys, this is Colton here. Today I will be showing you my presentation on a car monitor that I built for my car. The goal of it was to use an OBD reader. I'll be getting into that here shortly. So as I said, the goal of my project was to create a touchscreen interface installed in the vehicle. I wanted to output real-time engine data such as vehicle speed, RPMs, temperature. I wanted to also log that data so I could compile it at a later date. Something like this would be used mostly in race cars or when you want to fine tune a vehicle, and although that's not necessarily my specialty, I feel like this could be implemented in a situation such as that, so I wanted to create something myself at a low budget. So the basic setup I had was the hardware I used was an OBD II to USB cable. This was used to interface with the vehicle. The OBD II port is generally used to read off engine codes, but it also has the capability to output engine data in real time. And the purpose of being the USB compatible is so I could connect it to the Raspberry Pi. So the other hardware I used was a Raspberry Pi Model 3B with the touchscreen display, and you would obviously need a vehicle for this. The software I ended up using was Raspbian, which I used ForeScan, which is a program that is generally used for Ford vehicles. I believe it also supports Mazda. And then Wine, as ForeScan is only compatible with Windows operating systems, you need Wine to emulate on the Raspberry Pi. Some of the difficulties I had with this project. So the biggest one I had was software compatibility issues. Part of this was due to the OBD II port scanner that I bought. The more money you spend seems to be the better port reader you get, and the one I bought wasn't compatible with a lot of programs, which is what led me to using ForeScan. That worked well for me because I have a Ford vehicle, but that won't work for all vehicles. Due to that, I had to use emulation, and that's not really the best option because I was running on Raspbian, so I wanted to do everything under Linux, but that wasn't always an option there. And then with that came port recognition. So because it already goes from OBD II to USB, you already have some problems there. And in order for ForeScan to recognize it, it has to recognize it as a serial port. And since it came in through USB, you had to go into a lot of registry files and edit the ports that it was scanning under in order to get that to recognize the USB as a serial port. So this is a running example I have. The camera's kind of shaky as I had to record it myself, but that's what the general layout looks like when you are when it's running in the car. Some of the improvements that I had, so the biggest problem that I had was a lot of cord clutter. So along with this, and so this will be all documented in my documentation, which will have links to where I bought all of my materials, how I set it up, hardware, software, all of that will be in my documentation. So if you feel like you want to follow this project, feel free to open that up. So the main problem I had was cord clutter. I had to use a power inverter in order to power the Pi, so that's running down to my car to power. And then I also had the USB to OBD II reader running under my steering wheel, so it was getting caught up in my legs a lot. Bluetooth would be a good solution to this, as you wouldn't have the cord there anymore, but that would also probably introduce some more issues with compatibility with programs, especially on the emulation side. I'd like to change the frequency of logging the data. So the biggest problem I'm having is ForeScan reads data at about 30 to 40 times a second, which in a 2-hour trip I had logged 186,000 different instances of data, which is just a little bit too much for my purposes. I'd like to turn that down maybe once a second so I could actually look through my data and see trends versus having to sift through thousands of pieces of data. And then I would like to make a better process of transferring my log files. So the biggest problem with that is right now I have to either email the log data to myself, or I have to put it on a flash drive and then transfer that as I would need to open it in Excel. And you generally would want to avoid that on Raspberry Pi. That's something you would want to look at a later date on your computer. So thanks for watching this. If you guys want to follow this video, I will, like I said, I'll put my documentation into the comments, and I will try to be responsive if you have any questions, you run into any issues. I'll try to be responsive to comments, try to help you out there. I don't really have a whole lot of experience, but if you decide to follow this and want some help, I should be open to helping. Thanks for watching.